Hello and welcome to Cookery of Mason Storm. On this channel we make delicious meals for every skill level. And on today's episode we're going to be making some salmon in tinfoil in the oven. Stay tuned to see how it's done. The ingredients we'll be using for this endeavor consist of half a teaspoon of cayenne pepper, 1 teaspoon of onion powder, 1 teaspoon of garlic powder, 1/2 cup of butter, and our piece of salmon. And to begin our process, I have my nice saucepan on the stove top, kind of going for a medium heat here, and I'm just going to start melting the butter. The melted butter works great for combining with dry spices. That is the main reason why I'm doing it this way. The other way to do it would be to kind of soften your butter up and then just kind of sprinkle your spices on top. But I prefer the idea of melting the butter to a liquid and then mixing the actual spices into it. So then you have a spiced butter, an enhanced butter per se. Could also go the other way, instead of using dry spices and making more of an infused thing, where you would take your garlic and your onions and you could add them to butter and kind of cook them down and infuse the flavor right into them. In fact, that might be the more superior method for the creation of a tasty slurry to be combined with our delicious salmon. It doesn't take very long to melt, and once our spices are all mixed in and combined, we can move on to the next step. Here we have ourselves a nice sheet pan and some aluminum foil. I have my aluminum foil about the same size as my sheet pan. It's going to depend on how big your piece of fish is that you want to use with this technique, but this seemed to be about the right size for me. We'll have the fish right there in the center. And we'll get our hot butter mixture and we'll kind of pour it over the top, trying to get as much coverage as possible. We want our butter over everything. You can get out your little brush and you can brush the butter around and get complete coverage, and that would be fantastic. Now I'm just going to fold this up here and get it all nice and tight so that the butter doesn't leak everywhere. But before I fold it all up, or I should say, I shouldn't have folded it all up right here. We want to add a little bit of salt and pepper to our fish. So I'm just going to do that now. Get a little bit of salt and pepper on there. And then I'm going to actually finish folding it up before sticking it into the oven. That way we have a nice seasoning mix with the salt and pepper and our flavored butter, which is kind of a state of perfection. And of course we have it in the oven now at 350 degrees. If you have smaller pieces of fish, 400 works great as well. But because this is a bigger one, I'm going to cook it a little bit lower, a little bit slower. Just kind of take my time with it. Not going to be too overly aggressive or anything. And here we are after 20 minutes, and I got my thermometer ready, and I'm going to stick it into the meat, into the nice thick part of it, and I'm going to see what temperature I'm at. I'm a little bit slow, a little bit below my kind of target range, which is 160 degrees Fahrenheit, which is about the same as a medium rare steak, and I usually think that's about perfection when it comes to salmon. But before we stick it back in the oven, I'm just going to use my spoon here as a bit of a basting device and move some of the butter all over the meat to make sure it's all nice and covered. And then I'll fold it all back up and throw it back in the oven. And judging by how low it was in temperature, I'm just going to cook it another 10 minutes. If you're really close, do 5 minutes, take it out and check again. But if you're off by like 10 or 15 degrees, a little bit longer is not going to hurt anything. You just want to make sure that you don't burn it. So put it back in, but remember to check it when you say you're going to check it. Not that I've made that mistake before. And this is actually the third time I took it out of the oven, and we are right on point for the temperature. It may look like it overshoots it on this video footage here, but that's because I put it in a thinner spot for filming. But in the very thicket of the piece, it was perfect. I like to let it rest a bit, so after it's done, I just fold up all the foil again and let it sit for about 10 minutes before cutting into it and divvying out the pieces of the meat. I really like making salmon this way. It really adds a lot of flavor to the meat. The other thing you can do is you can add lemon slices to it before you bake it. But I didn't have any on hand, and If that's something you like to do with your salmon, let me know in the comments below. And if you like my content and would like to see more of it, please like and subscribe. And until next time, stay awesome.